Kendall tweets at Gary Sharp 6020, if Rule is a builder, does he need to hand off the program to a runner at some point?
So when things are where they need to, that's a good question, because we saw him get Temple up and then took on the challenged Baylor, and then got Baylor up and then took on the challenge of the NFL. Now back at Nebraska, where I think the identity is more resources. You're in the Big Ten. There's a lot of things of building, but I think also very appealing for Matt Rule to say, now it's time for me to be the guy who's built, but now can sustain and keep it at a high level. But I think it's a fair question.
I think it might be when does, trying to figure out what Kendall is asking, a little bit on what you said. If he'd like to have this be a player-led, where the players are the identity of the program. So you say, when Nebraska goes on the road, you know that X, Y, and Z, they're going to be hit stickers, and DR15 is going to make a play. Instead of this is searching for the identity of what a Rule team is, that he hands it off to the players. I think he really wants it to be that way. I don't know that they're fully there yet. I think he's handed off to the defense. I think he'd like guys to step up. Like, this is a perfect opportunity. This is why it's a fun game. I mean, it could be a hell of a tension convention for a lot of people tomorrow, but it's a good game to see where Nebraska is at. 19 games into Matt Rule's tenure? Is that right? Am I doing the math right?
Yes. Yep.
So it'd be 19 games on where Nebraska football is, because they haven't been able to seize momentum and keep it going.
Right.
They had momentum through the first 3 weeks, then hit Illinois, got stunned a little bit, and then found ways to win, but you never felt like, oh, okay, Purdue's going to lead to this big outburst against Rutgers. They haven't been able to grab momentum and keep it. And everybody knows what is ahead next week.
Right. That's why tomorrow's so important.
So when do you, when are you able to grab momentum in a sport that is week to week?
Well, and I thought about what you said yesterday, because I think it was interesting given the remaining games, including the Ohio State game that we talked about, saying that these are the two toughest games remaining on Nebraska's schedule. The more I thought about that, and you just brought up something that kind of triggered this thought. If you win tomorrow, nobody's expecting you to win against Ohio State. So how do you look in that game? I think also goes a long way. Now, don't tell the guys,
Jesus, you'd get
put on the uniform.
Fired if you beat Ohio State next week.
No, you like, screw Michigan game. But you win tomorrow, but say you lose, but you're respectable in that game. What you have in front of you with UCLA coming at home, I think has a much different feel than if you were to lose tomorrow. You lose regardless of how you look against Ohio State. And you've got that remainder, because then I think it's a lot of similar feelings of last year of, here we go again. You've got a winnable game against UCLA, much like a winnable game against Michigan State. A winnable game, I still think, at USC. Would say that's probably a tad more challenging than what Maryland was a year ago. But to your point of the perception of the program, of how confident are you in that final month for the season for Nebraska, which has to show real growth? Because we talked about this at the beginning of the season.
You have to change the equation.
Absolutely. And that's why I think tomorrow is the most important game for doing so, because
it's the Super Bowl. There you go, Nick. Nick, you and Matt Rule are.
We are.
It is the Super Bowl.
There's
a lot of Super Bowls. Do people realize that there is only one Super Bowl a year?
Well, there's
a lot of Super Bowls.
Was it Lee?
Way too many Super Bowls.
Was it Lee who just said the Super Bowl for Louisville is the Miami game?
Yeah,
we got a lot of Super Bowls this weekend.
Hey, I'm proud of my Super Bowl appearances lately. Quit tainting the Super Bowl. There is only one Super Bowl. Not every week can be a Super Bowl. Come up with a different name.
Yeah, like a game of the century. There's always a game of the century every year.
That is true.
Like, why do we always have a game of the century? But no, that importance, I mean, think about that. Coming out of the bye week, being 0-2 as opposed to 1-1, where people expected you to lose that Ohio State game, with a golden opportunity to not only beat a bad UCLA team, or was it a not great? Or wait, how did Sip call them? No, they're a not terrible team. A not terrible UCLA team. But also trying to build up even more momentum to go on the road, which it would still be very respectable, go on the road to LA and beat USC. And then after that, who knows what Wisconsin is? Iowa, we know that at the very least that game's going to be close, regardless of where Nebraska comes on the equation in that result. So tomorrow is definitely, in my opinion, it is a big tipping point for this season. I mean, I don't want to overdo what it is, but Indiana has enough with what they've shown that makes it that type of game too.
So you think, and tell me if I'm reacting to what you just said differently, that this could be a very fragile football team? That the result of tomorrow, if it's on the right side of the column, not the left, could be detrimental?
I think it could be problematic, yeah. I really do. I think it could be problematic. Because this is what I think those veterans, guys like Ty Robinson, guys like John Bullock, they came back to playing games like this and win games like this. And that's not necessarily even because Indiana's ranked, but knowing that you can, first of all, you can take care of bowl eligibility right then and there tomorrow, with still plenty of opportunities to build on top of that, but also to go on the road now, again, regardless of the ranking of Indiana, where people are looking at you thinking, I don't know. I don't really trust you. I think this is that opportunity that they came back because they wanted to change that narrative, hand that off to the young guys. If they fail to do that tomorrow.
Well, you're saying it's scary. So if they don't win tomorrow, could be another year where you get to 5. And I mean, there's no guarantee with the UCLA game, USC, Wisconsin, or Iowa, that if you get to 5 and then all of a sudden you go on a losing streak again. I don't know if I sense that the team is that fragile that a result that they don't like tomorrow derails them.
I don't know, man.
You honestly think that like they could go into a tailspin and lose 6 in a row?
I don't think I still think they would get the 6. I still think they would beat UCLA. I still think the floor, and I feel confident regardless of what happens tomorrow, I still think the floor is 6. But wasn't it supposed to be better than that? And you're supposed to have some opportunities here.
I don't know, they haven't played the game yet tomorrow.
I know, that's what I mean. That's why I think tomorrow is such an important game. Because I could see a world that if they don't win that game tomorrow, that even beating UCLA, that there is that tinge of disappointment with how they go into some of those games. And at that point, it would be, your guess would be as good as mine as where their head would be. And there's a lot of quality leadership on that team. And I think that's a good thing. But something about tomorrow's game, I feel like, and on the flip side of that, they go in tomorrow and win. I think all of a sudden you're looking back at potential 8-9 wins because of being able to, what I think is the game they have not been able to win. They do that, what it could do to that entire team. Because I don't think the young guys are fazed by it as much. I think it's a lot of the older guys that still have a lot of that, and they're trying to accomplish that. They're trying to get that game in the books in the win column and be like, finally. And you always talk about, that's when you feel like you're playing with the house money afterwards. Because, okay, hey, no one's gonna expect that we beat Ohio State. Let's go in and compete our asses off, which I know they will. They're coached that way. But all of a sudden, then what's the ceiling of this team if they win tomorrow? Because I think my biggest fear right now is if they lose, I'm afraid that that floor is, maybe that ceiling is very minimum, as opposed to if they win tomorrow, I think that ceiling all of a sudden back into some of those numbers that people were talking about at the beginning of the season of 8 or 9 wins. I think tomorrow's game could have that impact.
All right, we'll do predictions. Now I'm very curious on what your prediction is going to be in about an hour.